Fluorescent lights above hummed, cold and unforgiving, as if they too wanted me to feel small. I stood there, clutching the strap of my worn backpack, watching Mom press my passport into Lily's perfectly manicured hand like it was some royal coronation. Lily smirked, a practiced curl of her lips that she'd been perfecting since we were kids, back when I thought sisters had each other's backs. "She's going to Paris for a year. She needs it more than you ever will," Mom said, her voice loud enough for the people in the check-in line to glance over. Her tone wasn't just dismissive, it was a knife disguised as a fact. Lily tilted her head toward me, her designer scarf shifting slightly as she leaned in. "Don't pout, Maddie. Maybe you can go someday, if you stop wasting your life." She tapped my arm lightly with the passport case, almost like she was blessing me with my own humiliation. "Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video." I could feel the heat building behind my eyes, but I refused to blink. I wasn't going to give either of them the satisfaction of seeing me break here, in the middle of Terminal B. "Mom, this was supposed to be my trip," I said finally, my voice low but shaking. "I saved for 2 years. I booked everything." Mom turned to me slowly, like she couldn't believe I was daring to speak. "You saved?" she scoffed, her laugh sharp and mean. "Honey, you wouldn't even have that money if I hadn't let you live rent-free all this time. Consider this repayment." The man behind us shifted uncomfortably, pretending not to hear, but I saw the flicker in his eyes. Pity, the one expression I hated more than their smirks. Lily slid her arm through Mom's, leaning her head on her shoulder like she was some fragile angel that needed protection. "She's just jealous. You've always said I was meant for bigger things." "And you," Mom said, and turning back to me, "you've always been here." She gestured vaguely at my scuffed sneakers, my thrift-store jacket, my existence. The boarding call for Lily's flight blared over the speakers, and I felt something inside me shift. Not just hurt, not just anger, something heavier, something that hummed with intent. "Have fun," I said, my voice flat, but my mind already somewhere else. Because while Lily hugged Mom and strutted toward security, dragging my dreams in her expensive luggage, I was already mapping out the first step of a plan I'd never once thought I was capable of. I stayed silent as Mom watched her favorite child disappear into the crowd. She didn't even look back at me. She just muttered, "Don't wander off. I need you to carry my bag to the car." And I did. I carried her bag. I followed her out of the airport. I listened to her talk about Lily's bright future as if she'd already forgotten mine. But the thing about people like them is they mistake silence for surrender. They didn't know I was done playing small. They didn't know I was already deciding exactly where I'd make them choke on their words. They'd handed my passport to Lily. But I was about to take back more than a trip. Mom's words were still rattling in my head by the time we pulled into the driveway, her car radio humming softly with a station she knew I hated. The winter air bit at my cheeks when I stepped out, but I barely felt it. I was too busy replaying that scene at the airport over and over like a scratched record. Every time I saw Lily smirk, every time I heard Mom say, "Useless anyway," my jaw clenched tighter. The house felt colder than outside. Even with the heat on, it wasn't the temperature. It was the atmosphere. Every framed photo on the walls was a shrine to Lily. Her graduation cap tossed into the air, her prom dress shimmering under flashbulbs, her Volunteer of the Year award. No trace of me except the family group shots where I looked like the extra that wandered into the scene. Mom walked ahead of me, tossing her coat onto the couch. "There's leftover pasta in the fridge if you're hungry," she said without looking at me. "Oh, and don't forget, your sister's room needs tidying before she gets back next year. I don't want dust settling on her things." That was the moment I realized. Lily hadn't even left yet, and her absence was still more valuable to Mom than my presence. I went upstairs, my room dim and cramped, with a window that stuck shut in winter. I sat on the bed, pulled out my phone, and stared at my bank app. The number there wasn't small, not anymore. I'd saved for Paris, for months of travel, for once-in-a-lifetime experiences, and now all of it was in Lily's possession. My money had bought her escape. But money wasn't the only currency. I thought about Lily's carefully crafted image, the perfect daughter, the world traveler, the future global entrepreneur Mom bragged about to neighbors. I thought about the way Mom used my life as filler so Lily's looked even shinier in comparison. And slowly, a plan began to take shape. The next day, I started small. I told Mom I was going for a walk, but instead, I went to the community center where I used to volunteer before they cut my hours. Mr. Jacobs, the director, still remembered me. He also remembered Lily, specifically how she'd blown off the charity gala she was supposed to attend last year because she had better plans. He laughed when I mentioned her name. "Your sister? She's not as perfect as your mom makes her sound, is she?" By the time I left, I had more than a few reminders of Lily's selfishness. The week after, I visited old teachers, old neighbors, anyone who had seen the Lily behind the curtain. I wasn't collecting dirt for gossip. No, this was about creating a mirror so polished that when Lily finally looked into it, she'd see every crack she thought she'd hidden. Meanwhile, I stayed quiet at home, polite, helpful, carrying Mom's grocery bags, cooking dinner when she forgot to make enough for me. She didn't notice my silence had changed. It wasn't submission anymore. It was calculation. And then the letter came. It was addressed to me from a travel agency in Paris. My stomach turned as I read it. A confirmation of your booking under Lily's name, paid in full, using my bank details. Mom hadn't even bothered to cover her tracks. She'd taken my money directly, right from my account, with a borrowed checkbook I didn't even remember leaving out. That night, I walked into the kitchen where Mom was sipping wine and scrolling on her tablet. "You used my account to pay for her trip," I said flatly. She didn't even look up. "Of course I did. Don't be dramatic, Maddie. It's not like you were going to use it for anything important. Besides, Lily will make something of herself. You'll just stay here." Something in me went cold. I realized then they didn't think they had taken something from me. They thought they'd simply rearranged what was already theirs. "Right," I said quietly. "Just stay here." But I didn't stay still. That week I reached out to someone Lily didn't know I was still in touch with. Her ex-best friend, Jenna. Their friendship had ended in flames after Lily stole her internship opportunity and then publicly humiliated her at a party. Jenna still carried that betrayal like a fresh scar. "You want her to choke on her own lies?" Jenna asked me, her eyes narrowing with the same hunger I felt. "I want her to watch her whole castle crumble," I said. Over the next month, while Mom posted updates about my amazing Lily off to change the world, I was working quietly, making sure that when Lily's perfect image cracked, it wouldn't be a small break. It would shatter. By the time Lily boarded her flight, I had everything in place. And the beautiful thing, they didn't suspect a single thing. Because as far as they knew, I was still that quiet, useless Maddie who didn't fight back. They'd learn soon enough. 2 months after Lily's flight, Mom's bragging had reached a fever pitch. Every phone call to relatives was laced with "my daughter in Paris" updates. Every social media post had her holding up photos Lily sent. Lily by the Eiffel Tower, Lily in cafes, Lily networking with international elites. Except those photos weren't what they seemed. The first crack appeared on a Tuesday morning. Mom was at the kitchen table, scrolling her phone when she froze. "What is this?" she muttered, squinting at the screen. Her hand shot to her mouth. I glanced over her shoulder. There was Lily, same cafe photo as before, only this time the post was captioned by someone else. "When your so-called friend skips out on a charity bill and leaves you to pay for her overpriced brunch. Never again." Within hours, the comments exploded. People tagged others, linking stories about Lily ditching charity events, breaking promises, and using connections for personal gain. Each post came from a different person in a different city with receipts, actual receipts, attached. It was Jenna's network in action. The stories weren't lies. They were truths that had been swept under rugs for years. I'd just made sure every rug got lifted at the same time. By the end of the week, Lily's social media was a graveyard. Brands she'd been collaborating with cut ties. People she'd once boasted about knowing unfollowed her. Even her travel visa, her precious ticket to staying abroad, was suddenly under review after an old, unpaid hotel bill resurfaced in France's systems. Mom didn't speak to me for days, not out of suspicion, but because she was too busy on damage control, calling anyone who'd listen, swearing Lily was misunderstood. But the thing about a collapsing castle, once the first stone falls, the rest goes fast. And then came the call. I was in my room when I heard Mom's phone ring. "Lily, honey, what do you mean they canceled your program? What do you mean you can't stay?" There was a long pause, and then Mom's voice cracked into a sharp whisper. "No, we can't send you money. We don't have it." That was my cue. I walked into the living room just as Mom hung up, her face pale, eyes darting between me and the floor. "She's coming home," Mom said, almost to herself. "She'll be here next week. She's not in a good place." I leaned against the doorframe, crossing my arms. "Guess she'll have to stay in my room, right? Since hers is all dusted and perfect." The look she gave me was the first time I'd ever seen genuine fear in her eyes. Not fear of me physically, but fear of what I might do, because she'd finally realized I wasn't the same girl she handed away at the airport. When Lily walked through that door a week later, she was unrecognizable. Not physically, no, she still had the clothes, the hair, the posture, but the shine was gone. She didn't meet my eyes when she passed me. She didn't smirk. She went straight upstairs without a word. Mom tried to keep the house running like nothing had happened, but the silence was deafening. No bragging calls, no framed updates. Just the ghost of her perfect daughter drifting room to room. And me? I sat in the kitchen every morning, sipping coffee slowly, making sure the quiet stretched long enough for them both to feel it. They'd called me useless. They'd called me nothing. But now, I was the one still standing, calm, whole, and untouchable, while they lived in the ruins of their own making. And that was better than any Paris trip could have ever been. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video.